One more thing, LunART Live events are sponsored and produced by Microton Media. So a huge shout out to Dave Alcorn and Microton Media for helping us spread the word about awesome women in the arts. So today, my friends, we have a very special treat for you. Our guest is Deborah Henson-Conant, Grammy nominated electric harp virtuoso, one-woman orchestra that mixes music and storytelling and movement. Deborah is a performer, composer, educator, a showwoman, an entertainer, I mean, everything, you name it. And her music is described as a cross genre between jazz and pop and folk, blues, flamenco, Celtic. So she's altogether absolutely fascinating, and I'm her big fan. I learned about her about 10 to 15 years ago. And Deborah, I didn't even tell you this, but I actually performed your Baroque flamenco. I rearranged it for like flute and lever harp, but we can talk about that later. So I'm so excited to have her today with us. So with that, Deborah, welcome to LunART Live.
Wow, that's great. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
So how are you doing today?
I'm great. It's freezing cold outside. It's in Boston. I'm glad I'm inside. And I also have felt like we've been inside for a long time right now.
Yes. Oh, I feel you. I feel you.
Yeah.
It's also very cold here in Madison, and I'm looking forward to springtime, but
Yes, me
not even
too.
close to that. So let's dive straight in. Your creative life is so rich and so interesting. And nowadays, everyone knows you as like hip harpist. You're this
Right.
one woman orchestra with like this electric harp and doing crazy stuff on stage. But I would really love to talk to you to talk about your beginnings. So why harp? Why music? How did you
What?
start? Where?
Oh,
Let's go
yeah.
back.
Okay. Well, why music? I mean, music was my first language. In fact, in fact, in fact, in fact, if I were to speak in my first language, I would speak like this. I would do it all the time. It would be so much easier for me to understand myself if I just sang everything. So, language, I mean, the language was my first music. I think language was my first music. Music was my first language. I mean, my parents courted by singing, which doesn't mean they got along. They divorced early, but I'm sure that I heard them singing like even before I was born.
Mhm.
And so there was just no question. And all my relatives communicated with me through
Mhm.
music.
Wow.
Probably kind of like that, like, oh, it's a lovely day, don't you think? What do you say? And so that was just and so it was also my refuge. I just realized that just now, that it was also when we were singing, we weren't fighting or anything else. So it was also a really beautiful place. And all my relatives had instruments, meaning like they had a piano in the corner, or and my mom played ukulele and my father played the banjo, and so I learned how to play the ukulele when I was 7, and I still remember that moment because it was magical. It was the moment when I learned how to make a shape with my hand, that and then I would sound these strings. I i could then accompany myself. And until that point, I had to rely on other people to make the music.
Right.
And with that moment, I can't describe the sense of em- empowerment, but not just like, oh, I'm powerful. It was more like somebody opening up a door and saying, so here's the magic of the world.
Right.
And then, and simply by shape and engagement with an instrument. And so I played ukulele, and then when I was 10, I fell in love with all these movie musicals, and the music. Like I fell in love with Misty and all these. And I asked my mom how to play them, and she
Mhm.
didn't know how to play the piano either. But we always had a piano because she was a singer. But she taught me how to create chords. I mean, she just said, okay, there's a note, and then you put a third on top and another third on top, and you just stack thirds. You just add these thirds. This makes a root, and this makes a an interval. This makes a triad. This makes a seventh chord. This makes a ninth chord, and that was it. I mean, it was probably a 10-minute lesson, but it was like, okay, you want to use this toy? This is how it works.
Right.
And then I was pretty much left alone. And I just I had all this sheet music that had guitar chords on it, but I would read them on the piano. So I
Mm-hmm.
did not start on the harp at all. I did have some lessons when I was a little kid. Uh, I was clearly fascinated by music. Music was my life. I started writing musicals when I was in 6th grade. And so they thought like, oh, she's going to be a musician, we'll give her music lessons. I didn't like piano lessons, and they gave me guitar lessons. I didn't like guitar lessons, and they were like, oh, I will try harp. So my mother was one of the first students at the North Carolina School of the Performing Arts. She had all these friends, so I just went the route of all these different instruments, and the harp was the last. They borrowed a harp, gave me some lessons, and when I was like, I do not like harp lessons, then they finally were like, oh, she doesn't like lessons. So then I just played.
So why didn't you like lessons? What was the
The
problem?
whole thing didn't make any sense to me. Like, I remember once saying this was actually when I was a little bit littler, piano lessons, and I remember the teacher giving me this music, and I was like, didn't anybody else ever play this song? And she was like, yes, of course. And I was like, didn't they do a good job? And she was like, yes, they did a great job. And then I was like, well, why do you need me to do it? Why do I need to do it then? Somebody's already doing that. I should be
Right.
doing something that only I can do. I don't know where I got that idea, but that was it just didn't make sense. And I wanted to know how it worked.
Mhm.
And especially because when I was 11, we didn't listen to the radio. I didn't listen to recorded music. That wasn't part of my culture.
Mhm.
It was all live. But one day I turned on the radio, and there was this. It was Debussy, and I don't even know how to describe it. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's like a drug experience for somebody else. Like, I had no control over what happened to me. I was completely overwhelmed, and it was like, again, somebody opened up a door. And
Right.
that and again, I just felt like this, this is your path. This is what you're doing. And I was going to say something about that, but I can't remember what it was. So let's go on.
Okay, so you were taking harp lessons, you didn't like them.
I
So
took like 6 harp lessons. Yeah. Oh,
okay.
that's right. That's right. I wanted to know how it worked. Like,
Mhm.
how did it work that you'd be walking around the world, and then suddenly somebody would do music, and everything changed. Like, my mother was aspiring to be an opera singer, and she's a really incredible performer. And she was sort of, she would just be a little bit klutzy physically,
Mhm.
but the minute she took on a character, she would put on these recordings of the music without the voice, and she'd tell the story, and then she, she transformed. So it was clear to me that music transformed ex- experiential reality.
That's so powerful what you just said. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah,
And I wanted to know how and why. How does it work? This is incredible.
right. Right. So how did you, like, okay, so you're clearly not playing classical music, but
Correct. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
you were taking, I assume, like, you were taking lessons on a classical harp, concert harp.
Oh, no, so
And
the when I took those lessons on the harp, I took like 6 lessons, and then I stopped, and I didn't do it. But then when I got into college, my college band needed a harp player, and I had had these 6 lessons. So I became the
any
harp player. I was way more experienced than anybody else. I knew how to tune it. And at that point, they gave me a teacher. So I was 22 at that point. And they
Mhm.
gave me a teacher, and she was brilliant. She observed that I was a composer, and she just kept giving me enough challenges, and she would ask me to compose things and arrange things, and she was able to lead me along, and I got interested, and was for the first time I became interested in the experience of practice. Up until that point, I just wasn't interested. I just wanted to make some stuff up. But I got very interested in my body in relationship to the instrument.
Right.
And that but the whole time I was like, why the harp? And I kept telling myself the story, because you can make money at the harp. Because immediately I started to, I mean, I was playing in restaurants, and I really had very little repertoire, but I could improvise. So I was playing in restaurants, and I was writing musicals at the same time. And I was like, well, I'll just play the harp to make enough money to produce the musicals.
Right.
But it became very interesting to me. And I kept saying the same thing year after year after year, decade after decade. I kept asking the same question, why the harp? I can't play, I loved dissonant music. I couldn't really make that happen. And it's only becoming clear to me now that the physical relationship with this instrument is so profound, and because the instrument is so generous and so naked, there is nothing hidden here. The
Right.
relationship between your fingers and the strings is so obvious
Yeah.
that you change this, it's physical. Everybody can see. There's no mystery. There's magic. I've always believed that mystery hides the magic. The magic is when you can say, I'm doing this. This is what I'm doing. And then you do it. And then it's magical.
And you're creating something almost out of nothing, right? That's
Yes,
the
that's,
magic.
yeah, that's, whoops, sorry, I just hit my looper pedal.
I'm
Yes. As a
excited.
matter of fact, I recently did this challenge for harp players called Vision Music Challenge. And I wanted to be able to teach them improv without them having to learn. I wanted them to be able to learn the basis within 30 seconds so that
Mhm.
they could focus on the improv ideas. And so I came up with very simple motifs. That's a simple motif. So when you said almost out of nothing, this was the whole motif. And then I would teach them composition and creativity principles to expand this. So one of them is you can repeat an octave down, and
Right.
you can do that. You can always add another note below the note you're doing. Suddenly that's different. You can reharmonize it. You can change part and leave part the same. So still, all you have to remember is these three notes. Then you can add. And then thirdly, you've got the rolls, you've got the bass, the accompaniment, and then you can add a melody. You let the harp sing. And now out of so little, you can keep going and keep going and keep going. And I found 5 different, I just created 5 different little motifs that they could learn, so that within a 5-day challenge, they had a 5-part suite that they could improvise.
That's amazing. Well, this is a perfect, actually, now introduction into the video I really want to play for our audiences. And this song is very meaningful to you, right?
Yes, yeah,
So
that's right.
I want to play an excerpt from a tune, The Phoenix. And you play this with your band. I assume it was your band.
It was that was my band. I think the video that you have is a long time ago, like literally like 1990 or 1991. It's somewhere in the 90s.
Yeah, it's really, it's a long time ago. And I really chose it because you play on a concert harp
Right.
and you play actually jazz and blues and
Yep.
improvise. So can you tell us just a little bit about this video and you said that it's really important. This song is really important to you.
Yeah, this song is really important. The song came out of a time when I had been playing with a band, my first band, and the band had broken up. And people were literally writing to me and saying, "You're nothing without the band. Who do you think you are?" Fans were like, "How could you do that?" And I just thought, okay, I guess it's all over. I guess it's all over. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to make a recording, and I'm going to release it, and let's see what happens. And I wrote this song of that experience, and it was called "The Phoenix." And I needed that archetype to be in. So I don't think the introduction is on this video. So why don't I do the spoken introduction?
Yes.
And speaking with music is so important to me. Having the underscoring, the emotionality that music brings, that says what, no matter how beautifully you sing, the harmony of the accompaniment, it gives more, it gives that depth. So there is a myth of a great bird, and she is called the phoenix. The phoenix flies over all the world, and if her shadow should fall upon you, your heart and your mind and your imagination will be open forever. For 1,000 years the phoenix flies, and when she knows that her time has come to an end, she flies to the top of the highest peak, and with her last breath, she bursts into flames. But the phoenix can never really die, because she lives within the spirit of humankind. And that spirit comes to the mountain, and it stirs her ashes. It stirs her ashes as the moon rises, and it stirs her ashes as the stars turn. And when the very first rays of the morning sunlight light upon her ashes, once again, the phoenix flies. And then I give it to you to look at the video, to see what happens, probably in a different key, and when we do this with a band decades ago.
Let's hear it. Wow, Deborah, that's absolutely fantastic. And you really don't hear that often, like harp in this setting, right? With the band, and it's
Yeah, I guess so. It seemed so obvious to me, um, because it was like, well, the harp is, at least the concert harp, is like a guitar. It's like you take a guitar and a piano, or you take them apart, whatever. It's this, it's the same thing. And so I saw this over and over again. A blank bass and drums, blank bass and drums.
right.
And so I started. First, I started playing with a bass player, and then, and then and then I wanted to get famous. And so I I hired a publicist. And I remember, and he and I were playing in a restaurant. And I hired this woman, and she said, "Okay, so what are you doing?" And I said, "Well, we're playing in this restaurant and I'm playing jazz on the harp." And she was like, "Okay, but like what are you doing?" And I was like, "Well, that's what I'm doing." And she says, "Well, that's I can't really publicize that." And I was like, "Why not? Like I'm cool. Like why can't you publicize me?" And she said, "No, no, you have to like do an event. You have to actually do a thing. Then I can publicize you." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And she was like, "I'll tell you what, I'm gonna get you an event." And she reached out to a women's jazz organization. She did. And they said, "Okay, you can do a concert, but we want you to have a trio, harp, bass, and drums." And so we got a drummer. And it became the Jazz Harp Trio. And that's how that started. And that was really great. But my abilities were so, I mean, I had the vision, but I did not have the chops. So for a long time, I would always kind of structure the pieces, but I would give the virtuoso, amazing fireworks to somebody else
Right.
because they could do it. I knew when that needed to happen in the arc of the piece, but I couldn't do it at all. And so for years I played, first with harp, bass, and drums, and then in what you saw, a guitarist. I don't even know how he came into the mix. I mean, like I went to Germany, and my German agent was like, "Here's the band," and I was like, "Oh, because what's with the guitar player?" And they were like, "Well, he just comes along with it." And so I was like, "Okay, whatever." And that was great because I fell in love with him. I don't know how great that was actually. But anyway, um uh
He sounds fabulous, by the way. And I'm sorry, I just want to say that we chopped off actually the video right when he started his beautiful solo. So make sure to go to
that's
YouTube.
okay. He always played way too long anyway, so it doesn't matter. No, he is great. I mean, I always got to play with amazing musicians who pulled me along. And I think one of the greatest skills I had and still have is to be able to say, "I don't know what we're doing. Can you please help?"
Yeah,
And to and
it's
to
so
let them
important.
and to let them actually help. So you were asking, so that's what that band was. And when my band broke up, I felt really bad, but that's also when my development really started, because then I
Mm.
started playing with different people in different countries, and I really got the
A-
chance.
And you started, I'm sorry, go
No, no,
ahead.
no, no, you told me, and I started, what did I start doing?
No, I was like, I just like when you said you started playing with different people and
Yeah.
in different countries, but you also started playing on a different instrument. And
Yeah,
that's what
okay.
I want to ask you about. So we know you as electric harp player,
Right,
but
that's right.
you started
Well,
on a concert harp. So can you
that's
tell us
right.
how this came to life? Was there an electric harp before? You know,
Yes.
were,
Well,
like, how did that whole thing happen?
yeah, I mean, it's a pretty long story, but um, so the deconstruction of the harp, it started early. I mean,
Mhm.
early, and as soon as I started playing classical music, and I was like, I can't express myself. Okay, I need more. Then I started playing different music. Then I thought, well, jazz, that's going to open things up. So I shifted and I started playing jazz and learning jazz. So at the first I thought it's the different kind of music that I'm going to play that's going to make a difference. And then I began realizing it was my physical relationship to the
Mhm.
instrument. And this is over decades of playing with different bands. And then I was signed to a record label. And there was a real pivotal moment where I was on tour with this wonderful group called Acoustic was it? No, I can't remember what they were called. Anyway, Chieli Minucci and George Jinda. Really amazing, two amazing musicians. And I was on tour with them. And I remember we were every night, we would play, and George would, Chieli would take a solo, and people would be like, yay. And George would get up there and do the talking drum and people, yay. And I'd be sitting there and I'd do this very intricate, difficult solo and people would be like,
and nothing happens on stage.
yeah, they would just stare at me like, and I'd be like, what? This is no. And I deconstructed and I was like, what are they doing that I'm not doing? And I looked at George because he was this incredible, he would just play this little tiny drum and people would freak out. And I was like, okay, he stands up, he goes over to the microphone, he moves a lot and he sweats. And I'm like, okay, how can I do that? So the next day we're at Sunfest in Florida. It comes time for my solo. I stand up from the harp, I lean it forward, and I literally went like this. I was playing no music. And I will never forget this woman in the front. She stands up and she says, "You're a goddess." And I was like,
Love.
I see. Okay. All right. So how do I combine that energy and that physical communication with music that I'm really excited about? And so it was both looking for the music where I could start being the fireworks. And then I realized, and it was often a very physical thing, I was touring, my harp would get stuck. I was paying all this money and time to get that huge instrument around. It was this difficult. And I was like, this is crazy. I'm not going to be able to have a lifelong career if all I'm worrying about is the instrument.
Right.
So I knew that I had to have a smaller instrument, and I saw this amazing harper named Rudiger Oppermann, who had built his own electric harp in Germany. And then I saw these Scottish harpists who had electric instruments but big. And I was like, can you mix those together? I think my whole life is like, can you put those together? Because then... And so I made a prototype. I went to the most visionary harp builder in the world, a man named Joel Garnier. And I took this little tiny little thing like this and I strapped it on and I made it, silver. And I was like, and he was like, Deborah, now I understand what you want. It took me acting it out and making a silly little prototype to get my vision to the man who could make that vision into something physical. Now, this whole story, my TEDx talk is all about, so you can hear the whole story there. But the long and short is that eventually, through many permutations, we came up with this instrument. He came up. I was like, no, yes, no, no, I don't like that. I like that. It's got to be like this. But he was building it. And this is named after me, the DHC. So This is the electric harp, and it's amazing. It is, that I could have had this from the beginning. I feel like I now took 30 years to get it. But it's 11 pounds. It's got 32 or 30, I don't know how many. It's got plenty of strings. It's got levers up here. I can wear it. I can strap it on. I can take it anywhere. It goes in the luggage compartment of a plane.
Lovely.
Yeah.
And our next clip, actually, it's from your concert. We are collaborating with the guitarist Mason Williams.
Yes.
And I love that piece. And I really want our audiences to see. And and that's where you're wearing your harp in front of you and just interacting with him. So I really want to play this. It's just fascinating. So let's go to our next.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Okay, okay. I have so many questions.
I'm ready. I'm actually just thinking about that experience and how it happened and how wonderful it was.
Oh, it sounds absolutely amazing. But I was wondering, what struck me, there are two things actually. I would like first you to talk about just the mechanics of playing
Yeah.
lever harp. People, I mean, with a concert harp, you have like pedals. I don't know how many
Right.
like
Yeah,
pedals
that's
you
right.
have. But
So,
here, people saw you like constantly moving. You're playing with your
yeah,
left hand, but your right hand or
yeah,
vice versa
yeah,
is like
yeah.
moving, right? So how does that go?
Well, I mean, it was really hard for me to make the transition,
Hmm.
for and but but then I began to discover. So on a lever harp, on a pedal harp, you have 7 pedals, and you got A, B, C, D, E, F, G pedal. If you hit the G pedal, all the G's fret, and you
Hmm.
get 2 frets for everyone. You can have a flat, natural, or sharp. So
Hmm.
you really, and this goes back to historically. The harp was a diatonic instrument, and I can't remember when, but there was like a contest to come up with how can you figure out how to make the harp a chromatic instrument, and there were many different ways of doing it. But anyway, pedals were one of them. However, with the lever harp, so with a pedal harp, you change the Cs, every C on the whole harp changes. But with a lever harp, you only change the ones that you're actually doing, which is
Hmm.
amazing because then you can play, literally have the harp in several different keys.
Right, right.
But what I discovered, that this levering is also great for blues. Yeah, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's just so,
Right, right.
and it's so physical, It's just fun.
Yeah.
Whatever I'm bending. Um, so the levers are great. You can either look at, every instrument has its limitations, and every instrument has its um, like what is harpistic. And I learned this when I was starting to write for symphony orchestra, because I had this dream that I wanted to play with symphony orchestra, and I did this for many years. And that's a whole other story. But when I was writing for symphony orchestra, I would write what I thought I wanted, and then I would like ask a bassoon player to come in and play it. And the bassoon player would be like, "Okay, so what are you trying to do here? Can you sing it?" And I'd be like, I want to do this." And he'd be like, "Okay, great. Well, here's how to do that bassoonistically."
Hmm.
So every instrument has its own sort of vocabulary,
Right.
and discovering that has been really exciting to me. Because it doesn't necessarily, the way I wanted to approach the instrument. I mean, I wanted to play blues. I wanted to play, I wanted to play. I wanted to be able to play like as if I were a flamenco player.
Flamenco, right? Yeah.
I wanted to be able to access those energies,
Hmm.
like, and I knew that I couldn't become a flamenco troupe, everything, or even a dancer, but I realized that I could actually learn how to create that experience
Right.
using the instrument, and using both the physicality and also the, just how I was playing with music. So the levers, you just have to learn how to play with them, and that was just like, whoa. It's still hard for me because I didn't grow up this way, and I've added, like, you probably can't see this, I don't know if you can see this, but one of the things about a harp, at least in the Western culture, is the C's are red,
Hmm.
the F's are black. You figure out the rest, and then these are red. These levers are red. These levers are blue. I was on tour with a rock band, and the music was really hard, and I had to literally start adding other colors so that I could see what was what. It was disorienting to me.
That's fantastic.
Yeah,
So you are, as we saw, like you're a fantastic performer. You are a collaborator, right?
I
You,
love collaborating. I love
yeah,
it.
you're also a singer, and you write your own music.
Right.
So
Yes.
I just wanted to ask you, what's kind of your creative thought while composing, right? Where do you find your inspiration, and how does that go? And I was, wondering if you would like to maybe play something for us,
I'm
like
happy. I'm happy to.
live.
Yes, I'd be happy to play something live. I will say that, and it's interesting. I like to play. There's so many things I'd love to play, but w- uh, so usually the inspiration comes to me from a story, or
Hmm.
from a limitation, or from some kind of container, or some kind of challenge. So creativity, there's limitation brings creativity out, and structure, simple structures, support it. So for example, in 2008 the economy was tanking, and I had been working as a symphony soloist, and I just didn't have as many gigs, and so I was like, okay, I'm going to make one woman shows. I'm going to make some one woman shows. And so that's good. All right. But it has to make sense that the main character is wearing a harp. So, what stories can I come up with? And so the first story I came up with, like, okay, this is going to happen in the waiting room for heaven. Yeah. And it was called, What the Hell Are You Doing in the Waiting Room for Heaven? So it was a silly concept, and it was like a game show concept. It was like, yeah, what if to get into heaven, it was like American Idol, but the people, it was like Elvis and, whoever, was, and J.S. Bach. Those were the judges. But this is what I find really fascinating. No matter how silly the beginning idea,
Hmm.
once you really start writing and putting yourself in, it changes completely. And what started off as a silly concept ended up becoming a real exploration of existential reality, and some of them, and some really beautiful writing, and really heartfelt. And it ended up being a completely different show, and a show that I really love.
Nice.
So I will often start anywhere.
Hmm.
And that's what I do when I'm teaching, so I have an academy, and I'm always encouraging my students to have projects where they're creating something that they're going to share, not just learning how to do stuff. And
Right.
so I will often either say, all right, let's imagine that you're making something for someone you love, or let's imagine you're making a show. What is the story that we're going to work with? So for me, working with a story is often great. But this piece that I'm going to play for you, um, and I just it is in several different keys, so I need to make sure I get that right. I'm just going to go through it.
Hmm.
Okay, all right. So the harp is tuned in C down here. It's tuned in G in the middle, and up here it's tuned in, I think, in E. That will allow me to do this. I'm just turn it up just a little for myself to hear. Hopefully that won't mess with the. So this tune, and you'll hear me use the looper. You won't get to see me use the looper, unfortunately. I think it's really, I love being live because people can see everything. And like I said, it's not the mystery, but it's the reveal that makes the magic. But
Right.
I wrote this when I was on tour with Steve Vai, and Steve Vai is a famous violist, is a famous rock guitarist, and so we were going all around the world, and we were in all these stadiums, and or not stadiums, these like big theaters, and we would rehearse, and then they'd go off to dinner, and I'd stay in the theater. So I was in these beautiful, incredible, sometimes tiny, sometimes huge theaters, all alone. And I was also feeling really alienated or isolated. And so I wanted to get back to music that I really, really loved, so that I could feel like I was home. And so this was inspired by Dave Brubeck, and it's inspired by Rondo a la Turk, but it is called Brubecker.
Oh my God, that was amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much for this special treat. This was absolutely phenomenal.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
We do have a couple of questions.
Great.
So,
I would love to answer them.
yeah. So, one of them is like, what was your most exciting performance? And was there a performance that you were like, that's, we talked about those, something always happens, right?
Yeah. So I would say one of my most exciting performances. I wanted to write for symphony orchestra. I had this vision of me playing and singing with symphony orchestra, and I started building that music, and I started playing with symphonies. And some man came up to me after a show, and he said, "What I saw it on that stage, I want the whole world to see." And he sponsored a performance, and this is how I got a Grammy nomination. This was on PBS, and the night that when we were performing this, so it was with this huge symphony, all my original music. We did it 3 nights. It was beautifully filmed. And there was my brother was in the audience. My brother and my aunt were in the audience, and I was singing a particular song, and I knew that I could see him, and I just that was a very special, really special moment.
Yeah.
Another special moment similar to that, again with a symphony orchestra, but in a rehearsal, when we were playing my piece, The Nightingale, and it had a beautiful English horn solo. And when we started, it was in a rehearsal. So that means you're all alone on stage with an orchestra and an empty theater.
Yeah.
And as we began rehearsing this piece, it was clear we were not going to stop. And I was turned towards the orchestra, and this man was playing this solo so beautifully. It became this pinnacle moment that we who were in the rehearsal shared. And it was just this stunning, like, time out of time. And when it was over, we knew that we had all experienced something that was pinnacle. So that those moments, and often alone in rehearsal, that feeling of being connected to the theater and everything that was there before, and everything, why a building was built to house this experience.
Right.
And I would say one of my worst experience was recently, because we were trying to do a live. My local theater was able to open the theater, but for only 25 people in 500 seat theater, and I couldn't sing on stage. I had to go back into the anyway. I was really glad to do it, but there were so many technical difficulties. It was a beautiful moment to get to connect, to try to connect through all the disconnect.
Right.
And yet I had some technical issues, and nobody could come on stage and help me because we couldn't be doing that together.
Right.
So that was and the other thing I discovered being on tour, over and over again. I remember one tour I was on, and I started thinking, like, it seems like we have a different technical problem every night. I want to see if that's true. And we did. And I started keeping track of them. I wish I still had that list. It's amazing how many technical things can go wrong. And then, you just deal with it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, it's almost 1 o'clock, and I have one more. Yeah, time flies with you. I wish we have like 6 more hours to talk about everything you're doing.
I know it's fun to talk even when
Right,
nobody's listening.
right. So I have a question. Just like, what advice would you give to like a fellow artist that feels kind of stuck, that feels like, that cannot get this creative energy and fluids going?
Yeah,
How could you encourage them to like get out of the box and, transform
well,
themselves?
I'll tell you what I do is that I'm taking classes all the time. And
Mhm.
I'm not always taking classes in things that I can do. I will take a class in how, electric guitar techniques or something, which is not possible, but because it pushes me into a not possible. And I think a lot of the students in my academy, so I have Hip Harp Academy, and I think that they are there for that reason, to be with a community and
Mm,
to be with a mentor who can solve technical issues as well as artistic issues, as well as challenge them and show them the way, or show them ways, not the way. They're going to find their own way, but I can show them what I know, and also create a community so they can learn from each other. And so I think that finding that community is great. Having a mentor, I've always had a mentor. I can't
mm,
live without that, because then I don't have someone challenging me. And
right.
and the third thing is having a challenge that is on some kind of a schedule, so that you
Mhm.
show up even if it's not perfect.
Yeah.
And again, I am now doing that for myself all the time. Right now, I'm in the middle of a 30 days of love songs challenge.
Yeah, I
And,
saw that.
and
Yeah.
and it's really fun, because when you set up a practice like that, you
Mhm.
don't you don't have you have the intention of opening yourself.
Right.
It's not like, I'm going to learn this piece, although that's fine too. But if you have a practice like that that's open ended when you're showing up, then you're learning about yourself. And when you do, by doing it, by sharing it with others, all this information is coming in from other people. So
Yeah.
when I go do this on Facebook Live every night, the every morning I'm like, what did people say? Like, oh my, that's a great idea. Oh, I'm going to do that. So I'm getting all these ideas or perspectives
Right.
from
That's
other.
so powerful. I will make sure to I will go back and listen to what you said and try to implement that in my own creative process. So, Deborah, what's the best way for our audiences to get in touch with you, to reach you and maybe take lessons or
Yeah, the best way is to just go to my website. From there, you can watch the TEDx talk. You can watch, join the academy. It's easy. hipharp.com. That's hip as in cool, harp as in the instrument. So hipharp.com, and people can get on the mailing list and all of those things.
perfect? Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so
And
much
thanks
for
to Dave, and thanks to everybody else on your team. This was really, really wonderful. Thank you so much for a great conversation.
oh, my pleasure. So, okay, my friends, this is it for today. I really hope you enjoyed our talk and you got inspired. I mean, there's so many actionable items here, right? You dig into it. So, if you enjoy it, please make sure to like our social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram. Go visit Deborah's social media platforms. And if you want to see more of it, please make sure to donate to our website. Like every dollar really makes a difference. And one more thing, there is a deadline for Youth Art Celebration, for LunART Youth Art Celebration is coming up. It's Monday, February 1st. So if you know a young woman identifying artist, grade 2 to 12, please share with them this opportunity. You can go to our website at lunartfestival.org/youth art celebration. And we're looking for two-dimensional artworks that will be shared on our virtual exhibition during the Women's History Month in March. And if you have any questions, obviously just feel free to reach to us via Facebook, website. You can find us. So have a great weekend, everyone. And I will see you on our next LunART Live episode that is scheduled for February 26th at 12 p.m. Central Time with fabulous Plutronics. Bye, everyone.
Thanks so much. Bye.
Bye.